Fantastic. So Google Forms is just a really cool way for you to assess your students, poll parents, gather and collect any sort of data that you might want. So a couple of things that I'm going to be referencing here is this icon up here. It can be called the waffle. It's the Google menu. I'm going to just be calling it the Google menu in general because this is where you find all of your Google apps. So from here, you can actually scroll down into here in order to get to access any of the options that we're using. But I'm going to show you two ways that you can create a Google form. So you can actually create a Google form through Docs, or, which is some people's preferred way, I'm actually going to go into my classroom and I'm going to create a Google form from the classroom. So here's my class. Um, if I want to create a Google form, I'm going to go into classwork and I'm going to hit create. Again, I can't see all of your screens at the same time, unfortunately, so please, drop in the chat box if you need me to slow down or just interrupt me. I'm going to go ahead and create an assignment. It really doesn't matter which of these options you use. Typically, assignment is the go-to for me. And then from there, I will go into, let's say, morning math assignment, right? I would give my instructions. I try to be very, very clear in my Google Classroom because I want to make sure that students don't have any extra questions. We know they love asking us questions when the information is right there. So we want to be very, very clear from the get-go. So please use the form to answer this morning's activity. Boom. Then from there, you have a couple of options. You can either hit create and actually create a form from here, okay? Or you can hit add and actually go into Google Drive and see if you have one already created, okay? In my drive, I already have one that I created yesterday, but I will show you what one looks like from scratch. So it's creating the form for you. It's going to pop up and it's going to ask you a bunch of stuff. So this is the form name. So you can actually name it whatever you would like. I'm going to work with a form that I've already created, and I will show you how to populate these questions from those. So in here, 1 second. Okay. Fantastic. So here is my form that I've already created. A couple of things. I'm going to go a little bit backwards to go forward. So I'm going to show you the settings first because these are very, very important in the settings. A couple of things. Number one, collecting email addresses can be very, very important if you want to maybe start a mailing list or anything like that. If you don't necessarily need the emails, you don't have to keep that clicked. Um, So if you click collect email addresses, it's going to actually prompt the student to provide their email address for you. Otherwise, if you don't need it, that's fine. Um, this option is very important because this will restrict the user of the Google form to just those in your organization. And we want to keep that unchecked because sometimes our students are accessing our Google forms through their parents' emails or some sort of outside email address. So we want to uncheck that to make sure that everybody has access and that doesn't keep anybody locked out. The limit to one response is for if you're doing a quiz or something that you can you only want them to use once, you can do that. Additionally, the edit, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I have a question.
Yeah.
So if you don't ask for collect email addresses, will you still see what student responded? Will it still say their name?
So I will show you my form that I actually asked them for their first and last name.
Okay, because it won't just generate like,
It will not
okay.
just generate. So the edit after submit option is important. If you are doing, again, some sort of quiz that you want to get to right away, that and you don't want students to edit, then you can uncheck that box. But this allows them to actually go back into their work, their submitted form, and edit it and make any changes that you may have requested of them. And then you really want to keep this checked as well. The see summary charts and text responses. I'm going to show you what that looks like when we look at our responses. So this is just a general settings. Going back into the form, you're going to want to name it. Give it a name. You can give it math assignment and then the class name or just a generic math assignment. You can provide a description. I didn't here, but you can certainly tell students this assignment is for this morning, April 24th, whatever it is. Um, this option here is because I asked them to collect the email addresses, as you can see. So students can go ahead and enter the email address here. For our younger students, they may not know how to type in the email address. So you can actually uncheck that for them. And that way they don't have to provide an email. But in order to make sure I could identify my students, I asked them to provide their first and last name. So this will generate with their answers. Now here I have a couple of question types. And if you look, every time you add a question, so let me back up a little bit. When you want to add a question, you use this plus sign to add a question. And it's going to add a question here for you. If I can see where it added my question. Did it? Oh, it's down here. Sorry about that, y'all. So adding a question, you have some options here, and I'm going to go through the first couple of them because they're going to be helpful for getting the answers that you want from your students. So up here, these are short answers. So when I said, what is your first name? I can choose short answers so they'll actually be able to type in some text here. Same for the last name. Now for the classroom teacher, just in case you want them to choose from a set list, for this particular question, I use the drop down option. So it will literally give them a drop down menu of the different teachers. I'm gonna show you what that looks like as a student. Um, as you are populating your Google form, at any point in time, you can actually see what the student sees by going up to the top and clicking the eyeball. This eyeball will preview it as the student so you can see what it's going to look like when you're done. Clearly, I added those two questions and now they're just here floating about, and you can see that as you are editing. So for the who was your classroom teacher, the drop down, I provided the options for them so they're able to choose which one you want. That's good for when you want to provide information and you don't want them to have to enter anything. I'm going to go ahead and delete these because I don't need them. The good thing about this is that you can actually also copy a duplicated question. So if you've already created a question and you just want to use it over and over again as a template, you can actually duplicate it and it'll just come up again, which is a really cool feature there. As I go through, you see that there's a toggle here. This required toggle is very important because it's going to make sure that students are required to answer this question. They cannot submit the form without it. So if you look on this tab, you will see that the required questions have an asterisk, so they can't skip it. Um, any questions so far? I've just given you a lot. We're good. Okay, good. So I've gone to the drop down and then next question type that I'm going to cover is the multiple choice. So as you can see, which symbol below means multiplication. I just put them all in. The student is just going to select it, select which option, and that's going to be it. Now, you can also click the option for adding another response. They can do that as well. I will show you that a little bit further in the next question. This one is an example of a checkbox. So it says, check the boxes for the expressions below that are equal to 13, then in the space for other, write your own expression. This is, I'm guessing, typical third grade, fourth grade-ish, maybe fifth grade. So this is a checkbox response. So they'll literally just check off what you need. And then I also allow them to put an other. Now, this is where the math option can be a little interesting, where you can use something called you can use something called response validation. Now for math things, response validation is going to be interesting because you can literally decide how they're going to answer. So you want maybe students to select at least two, at most two, or select exactly as many. So maybe a child is going to think, um, I think it's all five of these. We know that all of these don't add up to 13 or don't equal 13 when you solve the expression. So in order to front load or to support our children or scaffold, you can actually use the response validation option to make sure that they're choosing the right amount of responses just in case. So when you say something like select at least two boxes and then you can either have like a custom error text, or it will just say, when I try to choose only one answer, when I try to submit, it'll say, select at least two. So that's really important. Um,
You just show us how you got to that again? I'm sorry.
Absolutely. The menu icon right here, the three dots at the bottom of your question, you click it and then you click response validation. You
Okay.
can turn that on or off.
Thank you
I'll
so
show that to you again, no problem. Here, I actually added a picture. I'm sorry for making you guys hungry because these donuts do look really, really good. So I'm gonna use a question just to mix up the question types that I have here. So when I go ahead and add my question, I'm gonna do this again. I'm gonna add a question and show you how I do that. So from the question, when I write my question out here, I'm gonna actually click on this picture and it's going to ask me to insert picture. The good thing about this is that I can actually do a Google image search and search for what I want. So if I want to look up donuts, it will actually allow me to choose one of these. So I actually got it right from here. So you can insert pictures for your math problems right from here. So I added a picture to my question. It says, use the picture below to help you solve the following problem. As you can see here, I was very clear about my instructions because again, we want to just make sure we are very clear. It's a short answer problem, so I'm gonna have them actually write the equation down and it'll be down here, okay? Now, this is another response validation thing. So you can actually, I chose to make it just a regular expression so they're able to write out their answer. But if you were just looking for a number, you could actually just write number for the answer and it'll just say, if they type in the word TWO, you want to say, it'll say, please insert a number specifically. So the response validation, if you start playing around with that a little bit, it would be really helpful for front loading and for just giving students some more support instead of having them just answer all willy-nilly. The last question type that I'm going to talk, the last one I'm going to talk about is, in here I actually put a description. So instead of actually putting a question, I actually hit this button, which is add title and description on the side. So it says, for the following question, write your response on a piece of paper, take a picture, and upload your response to the Google form. So here, I actually chose, which one is it? Oh, for the response option, I hit file upload. And that means that the students will actually be able to take a picture and upload the answers to your work. To the actual Google form. And when I go through the responses, you'll see how those actually show up. And it's pretty cool because sometimes, you want to see them show their work. Um, so this is just one of the options. There are a couple of other ways that you can do this, but this is the most straightforward. But to have students show their work through the Google form and their responses, they can actually take a picture of their work in their notebook and upload it for you. Okay. I'm not going to get to this part. This is how I can use Google Forms to poll your parents, but I'm going to get to that if I can at the end. And then I'll also be sending this form to Miss Harrison so you guys can make a copy of it and play around with it and do kind of, just to see how the setup works. Speaking of making a copy, when I scroll all the way up to the top, I can actually make a copy of this exact form by going to more here, this three dots icon, and actually clicking make a copy, which is very helpful if you want to assign the same form to multiple classes. So I can actually make a copy here, and then I can name it, if I can get to it, here we go, multiplication assignment 2-301 for another class, okay? And then I can share it with different people and things like that. Any questions so far before I get to the responses? No, we're looking okay. Very good. All right. So, oh, I can't see your thumbnails. Here we go. Here's the responses tab. So we have our questions where we create and edit our form, and then our responses tab where we can generate our responses. So we can see who has responded. I collected emails, so these are just generic responses that I created. And this is just a summary. So your summary tab is going to compile all of your responses into one kind of readable set of data. So here are our first names, our last names, and here are our responses. And they give us these really cool layouts. So for the classroom teacher, we can see that. So you have your responses here. Which symbol below means multiplication? We saw that two of the students got it right and one of the other students didn't get it right, right? And this is a really great way to have a top-down view of your data right in front of you. So you're able to go, ooh, 50% of the class missed this question. I know I have to go over it and look for mastery. Um, and then of course, this one will give me a bar graph. So you can kind of see what our responses are. And this was our expressions question. And you can see how each of them responded. And you can take a look and see if this, makes sense, right? For our picture option, they actually will show you an actual link to the picture, and these pictures are in a folder inside your Google Drive. So you can click on them individually in your summary tab, and it'll actually open up. Um, Please forgive my pictures. I was doing these on my computer, and I had a lot of fun recreating student work. So this is just an array where they just wrote 4 times 3 and equals 12. Just to give you a big tip, make sure your students write their name inside the picture because it doesn't organize it by name, and that makes it very frustrating. When you just want to look at the folder with all the pictures, it makes it very frustrating to get to. So just make sure they are writing their name in addition to their other work. Okay. And let me go to the, and then also you can actually view the folder with all of the responses right there in front of you. So you can actually just go boom, boom, boom and check the work as it goes along. So you can actually see all of them right in front of you. As you can see, I started adding the names here because I was like, okay, I don't know who this is. Even better. Now the individual tab. So we have by the whole summary, we have by question. So you can actually see what the responses were to each question individually. So you can check one question at a time and you can go one individual at a time. So you can see here that Kayla answered the questions like this. Okay. You can see all of Kayla's responses right here. Additionally, they will actually also generate a response in Google Sheets, which can be really cool in terms of organizing your information. So you can see the responses in a Google Sheets as well. So those are like all the really cool ways that you can organize the work in Google Forms, your responses, things like that. Any questions so far? It's a lot. Um, any thoughts, concerns? Okay, looks like we're all good. Fantastic. Um, let's see. So if we're all good with Google Forms, I don't think there's much else to do. Just remember for the math that response validation is going to be really helpful. Um, just to make sure that we're scaffolding for our students. I don't believe there's anything else that I'm missing. Oh, and again, when they want to submit on the bottom, I'm going to show you the student view. When they want to submit on the bottom, they will actually get um, a screen that will say, you can go back and edit your response, or you can, your response has been recorded, things like that. They can actually use that to edit their responses again if they need to. Um, so that's extremely important for them to use that as well. So if we don't have any questions about Google Forms, I'm going to switch over to Google Meet.
Can I just ask one quick question?
Absolutely.
Just as fifth grade math, one of the things we have to do is use exponents and division signs, obviously. Is there a way of typing them into there?
So the short answer is no. The long answer is, and I'm going to leave you with this gem, and you can kind of go ahead and move on with it. There is a Google, so the one way, the easiest way that I would attack that is by having them just take a picture of it on student work. Some people will use like, if you can, let me see if you can see my screen really fast. Goodness. So somebody will do like something like 6 to the, like using the caret sign to the second, that's a little frustrating, but there is a add-on that really doesn't work very well with Google Forms. It works really well with like Google Docs, and it's called Equatio for Google. So Equatio for Google it's an extension, and it will actually show you, it'll actually allow you to insert math as a picture. Um, I can maybe provide Ms. Garrison with some work for that, or that can be another full-blown PD. But Equatio is one of the really cool math tools that work well with Google Chrome, and it will actually allow you to insert the math into um, into a Google Doc. It will do it in a Google form, but the responses won't come out the way that they should. Any other questions about Google Forms specifically? Okay, so we're good.